So how was the weather this week, Mike?
Delightful.
Up to Penn State, not a bad drive this time?
Not at all. Not at all.
12 o'clock starts, I think, are always bad because the student body isn't there yet.
Oh, in that sense, it's tough to get in, in that sense. But it was a beautiful day.
When I went to State College, it was always, we're doing the show now. Let's get into this. I will continue my thought, though. When I went to State College, I always hated the 12 noon kickoffs because I couldn't tailgate and party as long. We had to start around 9. We went to bed at 6,
I can see how that would be a problem.
Get back up at 9 and really cut into the REM. About 4 o'clock, I was dozing off. So it was a good thing for the student body that the game became a blowout so they could be out of there by the end of the third quarter.
And clearly they were, yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's get into this, Mike. We're doing the low post. I'm Eric Stark, joined by my co-host, Mike Gross. And for those of you that don't like the longer show, you have ADD like I do. We've broken into segments. And up here in this spot where you'll see articles, click on that. Click on articles, and you'll get little, I'm going to call it, the word I used last week, I like it, vignettes. I'd have to spell check it to use it, but I'll say it. You get little small snapshots of the different segments we're doing. But for the whole show, we're going to get into it right now. Penn State football, we're talking about it. Let's look back. What impressed you the most about the Lions last week, Mike?
Well, Joe Paterno's been saying all along that he wants to see his team have some adversity. They did sort of have a little bit of adversity on Saturday because they struggled a lot in the first quarter and they kicked the ball around a little bit, had some turnovers, and still won 45-3
against the Temple Owls. It's supposed to be the best non-league opponent they've had so far,
and may have been. I think maybe the most athletic of the 4 teams they've played. I really think that it was sort of redundant in a lot of ways of the first 3 games, and I mean it's just like let's get serious and start playing these Big Ten games.
Well, let's look ahead a little bit. What makes you nervous about Illinois coming in? 8 o'clock kickoff, national TV on ABC. What jumps out?
You mean what makes me nervous if I were a Penn State fan or coach?
Yeah. Well, or nervous as a reporter. Does it make you nervous as a reporter for this game?
Deadline does, yeah. It's at 8 o'clock.
Yeah, let's get into that.
8 o'clock at night start deadline is a major issue. But Illinois is a team that has a lot of offensive weapons. They have a running quarterback, Juice Williams, who's a big, strong, very athletic kid who can really move, kind of like Michael Robinson a little bit in some ways. And not as good a passer, not as accurate a passer, but really a dynamic player who can make a lot of plays. They have a wide receiver by the name of Aurelius Ben, which seems like a fictional character. Seems like somebody out of a Dan Jenkins novel to me. But he's an excellent kickoff return guy and a good wide receiver too. And last year they beat Penn State 27-20, and he returned a kickoff for a touchdown. And last week, Penn State's kickoff return coverage was absolutely brutal against Temple. I think it's going to be, if it was brutal against Temple, there's a danger that it could be worse against Illinois.
Yeah, Illinois is probably salivating over the special teams for this game.
And having an extra week to prepare also.
They had a bye last week.
Had off last week, yeah.
Sure.
So that's kind of a big factor too.
Yeah, and it's really interesting we bring up Illinois, and I start thinking about one of their losses this year is to Missouri, pretty good team, especially based on what they did the year before. I think of in the future they play Ohio State, Penn State does, and Ohio State played USC, the number 1 team in the nation, lost 35-3, just like Illinois lost to Missouri in pretty much a shootout, a high-scoring game. And even Wisconsin, the other team in the Big Ten that Penn State's going to be going against later on, who went out to Fresno State and played a heck of a game as well. Leads me into a question for you, Mike. You see where I was building?
I think I see where it's coming down King Street where you're headed.
What's better, Mike, to play maybe a tougher 9-league schedule where maybe you're going out to U.S., Southern California to play the number 1 team in the nation, or traveling somewhere, at least playing somebody that's a lot tougher. And if you lose the game, maybe even your players listen more to you because they're humbled a bit. So what is better, to play a tougher 9-league schedule or at least play one of these tough teams, at least one, or do what Penn State did, which is play 4 cupcakes, but get to play all your players and get more experience?
Well, I think the way it worked out for Penn State, it worked out great. I think the schedule, the non-conference schedule that Penn State played would have been ideal if they were a real young team, kind of rebuilding, and had a lot of kids who had to get their feet wet. That would have been the ideal scenario. I think for a team as experienced as Penn State is, you would want to play a little bit tougher and get a little bit of a better barometer where you are. Last year, LSU lost twice and won the national championship. But I don't think you can do that unless you're in the SEC. I think that's the only way that's possible. So you have to look at the fact that one loss is a hugely damaging loss at any point in the season in this sport, more so than in any other sport.
Yeah, because I've read a couple of your Penn State articles that Joe Paterno has said, I really don't know where my team is at yet. I don't have a good way of gauging them yet. I thought, well, maybe if you would have played a tougher opponent, a more difficult opponent, maybe you'd have more of a barometer of where you are.
No question. Maybe they'd have a loss, too.
And maybe they'd have a loss.
Which is where I'm going with the whole national championship.
Whereas they started at 22, 23, and are now up to, what is it, 11 last
I think they're 11 or 12, yeah.
Ohio State was 5, loses to number 1, dropped back to, I think it was 12, 13. Now they're
now ahead of Ohio State. In the national rankings.
So I don't know how it's all going to play out. We'll see. I think it's wait and see.
Although I think if those two teams played tomorrow on a neutral field, Ohio State would be a slight favorite.
Do you think so?
I do. Yeah.
Well, I think we're going to see how the competition plays out. But I just thought it was an interesting scenario: the cupcake schedule or playing somebody more difficult. Which is better for a team? Let's stay in the football realm, but go pro football now. Mike, you ready for that?
I am.
Good. Let's go with the Philadelphia Eagles. And we're going to ask you a question as I'm watching this game. It's unfolding with the Steelers last week. All I'm going to say there is I predicted Eagles to lose that game, but I did Paula Wolf's little football poll we do in the office. Took the Eagles. 12-4 record this week, folks.
Very impressive.
I'm in the hunt for a championship.
Very
Chris
impressive.
Schmidt and I are tied. We'll have to see how the tiebreaker plays out.
Keep us posted on that stuff.
Yeah, gripping stuff there. McNabb and Westbrook both get hurt for the Steelers.
Right.
The Steelers game.
Right.
Question pops in my head as I'm watching this game. Which injury is harder for the Eagles this year to overcome, Mike? Losing their starting quarterback or losing their starting running back?
Now, do you mean...
We're putting parameters
Do you
on
mean lose them for the season? You mean lose them for a couple weeks at a time? That factors into it, I think.
I'm going to say losing for the season. Which one's a more difficult loss?
Wow. I would say this is really close. This is so close that I'm not sure that the answer is even meaningful. But I would say they could. I would rather see them go without Westbrook for the whole season than go without McNabb for the whole season.
Really?
Yeah. I think Kevin Cobb, although he's talented, is such an unknown quantity. I think there's a big issue of confidence in the teammates around him that would come up over the long haul. Over a short period of time, the Eagles have proven in the past that they can go without McNabb, prepare a backup to play.
Sure.
Which is why I asked that question: are we talking about a couple of weeks, or are we talking about the whole season? The Eagles are okay, I think, at running back with Buckholder and
Lorenzo Booker
and
Tony Hunt as well.
And remember that they are primarily a passing team anyway. I hate to downplay Westbrook because he's a great football player, but it's a hairline call. But I would say they could least afford to be without McNabb.
I think it's a great call on your part. I sat there the rest of Sunday evening thinking about that. Well, if you lose, because at one point they both were out of the game, I thought, if you lose these guys for the season, which one is the more difficult loss to overcome?
It's a tough call.
And I think Westbrook right now, the way he was playing before he turned his ankle, and they're saying he's day-to-day. He may sit out 1 week against Chicago this weekend, but be right back in there. And that's great news. McNabb's got sort of a sore rib or chest injury.
Yeah.
They both might not miss any time, but I'm just throwing it out there. The thing with Westbrook is he might be the best running back in the NFL right now, the way he's playing. Tomlinson's a little dinged up. Peterson's got a hamstring. Westbrook might be number one, but I still think they have enough guys to do it. I'm just worried that they had to go with somebody else at quarterback based on how McNabb was playing again this year, being healthy. So
it's an interesting dynamic now, which I wonder if you almost have to offensive game plan with keeping those two guys healthy in mind.
Yeah.
You can't get. McNabb can't get beat senselessly all season, so do you have to run the ball more in order to kind of protect him a little bit? And at the other hand, maybe game plan a little bit to keep Westbrook healthy. It almost factors into because of these guys' injury history over their career. It almost factors into the way you have to prepare, I think, a little bit.
And if either one is missing for any period of time, it does change how a defense covers them as well.
No question. Yeah.
Because they do at times have a guy that sort of shadows one of them, a linebacker that's just watching them. If they're not in there, that allows that linebacker to be free to go towards the quarterback or not be worried about.
The presence of Westbrook makes the wideouts more effective. And
Certainly
sometimes Westbrook is a wideout and makes the other wideouts in the formation on that particular play more dangerous. I mean, it has some ripple effect, no question.
Let's switch gears a little bit and talk. Still NFL, but go with probably the Eagles' most hated rival. Who would that be?
That would be your Dallas Cowboys.
Oh, yes. And they played the Green Bay Packers Sunday Night Football. And as I'm watching the game, like I'm thinking, and the week before even, Tony Kornheiser, when the Eagles were playing the Cowboys, said, well, Dallas is clearly America's team. And I'm at home, like, throwing things at the TV, going, no, they're not.
No, don't throw things at the TV.
And, I also, I'm an Eagles fan. I'm also a Packers fan. I'm thinking, Dallas is not America's team. I want to throw the question out to you. Are the Dallas Cowboys, or are? I don't know. We'll work on that later.
Editor.
Yeah.
Editor, folks. There you go.
Are the Cowboys America's team, Mike?
No. No, and because there is no America's team. The NFL is America's sport, but there is no America's team. It's a silly concept, and it's a concept that has been shoved down America's throat by the Dallas Cowboys. We don't have to buy into this. We don't have to buy into the idea that they are America's team or that there is such a thing as America's team just because they say so. Some circus geek in the Dallas Cowboys marketing department came up with this phrase, and we're supposed to take it seriously like it means something. It does not.
I'm with you. Being somebody that's traveled all over the country for the Green Bay Packers, they travel very well. And there's a lot of men, the baby boomer generation, a lot of men in their 50s and 60s, the guys I travel with, that are a huge Packer fan. I think it goes back to the Lombardi era where they were young kids, and that was what was on, and they were watching that. You told me a story earlier about Deuce Staley and the Pittsburgh Steelers when you were out there, and how Staley says that the Steelers have a huge following around the country because of what they did in the 70s.
Right. When people were growing up and people who had children during that era kind of infused their kids maybe with a little bit of, hey, the Steelers were the team in my day.
And I made the comment to you about Dallas saying, well, you either love them or you hate them, but you have an opinion. You said, well, maybe that gives them that America's team kind of thing. But there is this thing where I think it's why the national TV puts them on. They were the 4:15 game on Fox the first week, Monday Night Football the second week, and Sunday Night Football the third week. So obviously the national media wants to put them out there. These networks want them out there because they know people are going to tune in either to root for them or root against them.
Well, it's almost.
So we'll throw that out there.
It's almost the media is almost the wrong term here because we're talking about broadcast partners, if you know what I mean, rather than news and reporting and journalism.
Good point.
Right now, Dallas Cowboys are maybe the best team in the NFL, and certainly the most high-profile team with Tony Romo, who's Jessica Simpson's boyfriend, and T.O., who is considered to be a compelling figure. I think he's a simp, but they're a very high-profile team. In addition to what they have, interesting thing about the Dallas Cowboys is I don't think compared to the Packers, I don't think the Packers are nearly as hated around the country.
True.
There may be as many
Chicago
Packers
and
fans.
Minnesota, maybe, but yeah.
There may be as many Packers fans nationally, and I think part of that is the sort of the mythology that surrounds this Green Bay being a small town and it's kind of a municipally owned team to an extent, and people see Dallas Cowboys as sort of this big, sleek corporate monster, and they see the Green Bay Packers as sort of this small town in Wisconsin that happens to be in the football business. I almost in the mom and pop sense of being in the football business, although obviously it's not that simple, but very, very different ways that the two teams are perceived. But America's team, if you live in San Diego and you're into the Chargers, the Dallas Cowboys are America's team? What are you talking about? It has nothing to do with reality.
Ted Turner once tried to make the Braves America's team with baseball. That didn't go over too
well. That was because of television. That was because of a TV network that Ted had. But there's no America's team. There's your team and my team and his team. That has nothing to do with the way people actually perceive sports.
That's true. And you got Paul France's team, which is the New York Giants, and I think they won the Super Bowl last year. We won't go there at all.
No, he's also a Mets fan. What's going on there? What's going on there? Full disclosure, my friend.
Yeah. Too bad they're going down with the ship.
It is a shame. I hate to see it.
It is a shame. Let's talk baseball. That was a good segue.
I did the segue this time.
Yeah,
I'm going to update my resume when I get upstairs.
Good.
All right.
Phillies, we were talking, what should we talk about with the Phillies? And we don't want to get too much into stretch run. This is the last week of the season, folks, because we could talk about one thing with the Phillies, and they could lose 2 games the next 2 days before we come out here with the show.
You play this game. It's like so many things about baseball. You have to understand baseball. You have to understand you play every day.
Yes, we want to make sure we're relevant. So the question I have for you is, what has impressed you the most so far with this Phillies team, which is possibly going to win a division or go to the wild card and make the playoffs?
They're very, very close to having locked up the playoff berth. What has impressed me is when the pressure, when it got to the point of the year where you have to respond, where you have to perform, they've done it. That's the thing. I can't believe. I always say that pitching in baseball is the biggest wild card, erratic, unreliable factor, basic element in any team sport. Mm-hmm. The way the Phillies have pitched this year, this should have been their 100-win season. This should have been their year when they really go to the front of and just are the best team in baseball. That hasn't happened, and that's kind of disappointing to me because I'm not going to lie to you. I am emotionally connected to the Phillies. I don't like to admit that, but I am. But the way they've responded in the last couple of weeks, I think is pretty impressive and indicates to me that they are a mentally tough team that's gotten mental toughness from some of their failures in the past coming down the stretch.
That's interesting. One, I want to point out the pitching. How many quality starts has the starters had this year? You told me earlier.
I think the number is 84. It's some amazing figure.
Okay. He brings up the pitching, and I think it's a great point. That's a pitching staff that started with Adam Eaton in it. Also started with Brett Myers, who was horrible in the first half of the season, and to his credit, went to the minor leagues and got things adjusted. He's been pitching great.
And plays in this extreme hitter's park.
Yeah, that's the other factor. 84 quality starts, and they play in this little teeny ballpark. It's a home run, So it's really interesting that's a great factor. And the bullpen in the beginning of the year was fantastic. Struggled a little bit, but Brad Lidge 40 for 40 in save opportunities. No wonder they're in contention here.
At one point in the year, and I don't know
if this jinxed him.
I don't know if this is still true, but at one point in the year, they led the league in innings pitched by their starters.
That's right.
So you have this great situation where they don't have a Cy Young candidate among their starters. They don't have CC Sabathia among their starters or Santana like the Mets have. But the starters are consistently keeping them in games, and then the bullpen has been terrific, but has not had to be overused.
Right.
And I think we did have maybe 3-4 weeks ago, we had the bullpen, I think, kind of go through a dead arm stage. And I think they've gotten through that and come out the other side of that. And their pitching has just been amazing. And it's just so it's so frustrating to think of what they could have done if they had performed offensively the way this team is capable of. I don't think there's any question that they're capable of.
Time will tell. It's going to be a fun weekend here with sports, and we're looking forward.
This is a great time of year for sports, and the way things are evolving in Philadelphia, it's particularly great. September,
or just in Pennsylvania in general, with Penn State play the way they're playing the Eagles, Phillies. It's a fun time, and the Sixers get ready to get going too.
Absolutely,
we'll have it all for you. Hope you guys tune in next week to listen to what we're talking about. Until then, this is Mike Gross. I'm Eric Stark, and for our producer Paul MacGyver Franz. We'll see you again from the Low Post.